Hi everyone. So for this slide set, we're going to talk about hospital delivery systems. And so really what we're talking about is how food is delivered within a hospital setting. So up to this point, over the course of the semester, we've been talking primarily about school nutrition and school food service. So this is going to be just a little bit of a change and talking about hospital systems. In a hospital setting, we typically talk about these types of food service. We may have a traditional tray service, a bedside or spoken menu, or we may even have on-demand room service, for sort of following the format of a hotel. So in the traditional tray service model, patients may have to select their meals. They may select them up to 24 hours in advance, or they may actually have no choice in what meal is going to be served to them. They just, getting the meal that meets their diet requirements. So they don't select anything. The food is just simply served to them. In the bedside or spoken, the menu is read at the bedside, and the patient is then assisted with the menu selection. And then the meal just gets delivered to the patient. In the on-demand or the room service model, it definitely follows more the format of a hotel. Patient calls the food service department or a designated number. The person on that line then takes the order for the meal. The meal is prepared on demand and then served to the patient within a short period of time. And certainly, hospital settings could use some hybrid uh, method of any of these together. So they may have a spoken menu, someone assists them, but it's then served, immediately to the patient. So it might include both the bedside or spoken and the room service portion of it, or it could be a hybrid between tray service and a spoken menu. So there really can be a variety of different options there. So how does a tray line work? So here is another hidden treasure Easter egg. So one of the ones for this slide set. Click on the link at the top of the slide set. So where it's red and says belt to propel trays, that is a link to a short little video. Watch a few minutes of the video to get a sense of how a tray line works, and then go to the discussion board in Blackboard. You'll find the discussion board in the menu navigation on the left-hand side. Click that for the discussion board, and then look for the thread that says, how does a tray line work? And in a few words, describe how a tray line works. So look to put this in your own words, and you will get extra bonus points for doing this. So within hospitals, many sites, many facilities, food service departments are moving to the room service model. A room service model really gives clients or patients more choice in what they get to eat and when they will get to eat it. And so what do you think this does? What do you think will be the result of this choice or this ability to make choice? It could lead to an increase in customer satisfaction. It could potentially increase the consumption of food, which in a hospital setting is really important for recovery. So there are a lot of advantages in moving to a room service model. How does a room service model work? So the client or patient calls down to the diet office, or as I had said earlier, a designated number. A staff member answers the phone, takes the meal selections or takes the order. The information is then generally sent to a printer in the kitchen. And it would be sent to specific stations. So if the um, patient or client is ordering soup or sandwiches or hot entree, typically goes to that specific location. And then the food is prepared. Salads and sandwiches would be prepared in a cold production area, and then the food is put on a tray and then sent up to the room. While there could be some positive impacts on customer service and food consumption, think about what is the impact on food costs or even labor costs in moving to a room service model in a hospital setting. So here's another hidden treasure or Easter egg. Go to the discussion board and look for the topic that says moving to room service and answer the question about moving to room service. Your answer is going to need to address how this move could impact food costs and what the impact might be on labor costs. There are many advantages of room service, including improved patient satisfaction. There may not be a need for a traditional tray line in a kitchen, and a traditional tray line in a kitchen really takes a lot of space. So hospital settings may be able to get away from that when they use a room service model. There's the potential for decreased plate waste, decreased wasted plates on discharged patients because food is really only going to the patient when they need it or they request it. Food isn't just being wasted, it's, not just getting sent up to the room, particularly when someone's getting discharged. And then the last one that I want to talk about, because I'm going to talk about it more in the next couple slides, is increased Press Ganey scores. So what is Press Ganey? What are Press Ganey scores? So let's go on to the next slide. So what is a Press Ganey score? Well, Press Ganey is an organization, and they are the leading providers of patient satisfaction surveys. So they go into different various hospital settings, and they track surveys. They give and distribute surveys to patients and clients and employees, and they gather this data. The information that's presented in Press Ganey score or Press Ganey report is based on something called CQI. And what does CQI stand for? It stands for Continuous Quality Improvement. So it's a quality measure, quality approach that organizations can take. So we are going to circle back to CQI when we talk about quality measures and quality approaches next week. So within a Press Ganey score, they're looking for information on a variety of different things. And one of the things that they're looking at is information related to food and nutrition services. So scores or questions that are related to this piece may revolve around food temperatures or the quality of the food or the courtesy of dietary staff um, and other information. So what you see on this slide is an example of a report or a Press Ganey report. So again, these surveys really help healthcare care settings understand where they stand on a number of customer service related factors, including food service. So I was at UMass Memorial as part of the food service practicum earlier this semester, and the food service department there actually had a bulletin board where they posted their Press Ganey scores. So these are really used within hospital settings. And this information is really valuable to a food service department. So let's take a look at how you could analyze the results. So you can see on the form that based on the results, or within the results, I should say, that there is a section that is devoted to meals. So I've got some of that data circled here. You can see this red oval on the screen here. And for the meals, you can see that the results for the questions there vary. They're in the range of anywhere from 87.6% to 74.8, and the overall score or mean for meals was 79.5. So the average for all the questions within this section, and I think some of the section is cut off, is 79.5. So if we look at the next section, so if we look, I have a little blue box around the top and it says Press Ganey DB, and that stands for database, or the COTH, COTH peer group, or the NAPH peer group. So if we look at that section, and if we look at that section marked the COTH peer group, and COTH stands for the Council of Teaching Hospitals and Health Systems. When we look down that column for Beals, the mean is 75.5, and so 75.5 for meals, and the rank next to it says 86. And that 86 is the 86th percentiles. And what this means is the average for this subset was 75.5, and the hospital being reviewed ranked in the 86th percentile. So what does rank mean? It means that the average for this hospital was better than 86% of hospitals in the COTH group, and lower than 14% of hospitals in this particular group. So 86 percentile is not bad. There's room for improvement, and they could be better on that. But 86% is not a bad ranking here. Although within it, you can see that for the special restricted diets, that's a bit lower. The ranking there is 68. So there's some work to be done within the individual questions. So what are some tips for using Press Ganey scores? Press Ganey scores could and should be used to help the staff understand the importance of the survey and where they can make some improvements. So Press Ganey scores are a great way to use the information as visual charts to track progress and to motivate staff. And in UMass Memorial, this is how they use them. So the scores were put up there. They showed information in relationship to how they had done previously. And so it was used as a motivating factor to get the staff within the department to try to achieve even more. Certainly these scores can be used to recognize success, can be looked at from the point of view of where can we look to get other supporters involved in food service, so nursing involvement. Sometimes in some hospital settings, food is delivered to a floor, and nursing staff are actually the ones who then deliver it out to the patients. So, you want to encourage nursing staff and to be involved in the process, but also to let them to see what some of the scores are and how it is reflective of their involvement in that. These scores can also be used to empower staff to be innovative and service-oriented, right? So they can look at this as a way that they can be innovative in making changes in ways that we can increase and better these scores, and always with a focus on being service-oriented. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about types of delivery systems. So, what type of delivery systems do we need to use if a food is plated hot? And also, the question could be if the food is plated cold. So, we're going to talk about specific types of delivery systems, for example, insulated pellets or insulated trays or hot and cold delivery trucks. So, the first type of system we're going to talk about is the pellet system. And the pellet system refers to a plate or a base which is heated. Now, you can see in this slide off to the left, it's this metal plate. And this plate actually has two walls to it, and in between the walls, it's generally filled with some type of wax pellet or something that's going to help to retain the heat. So this is just an example of what a base may be in the pellet system. Then on top of this base is placed the dinner plate on which the food is already heated, and then a cover or lid is put on top of it to keep the whole unit warm. This is a picture, and it really just shows all of the equipment that's needed in a pellet system. You have this stainless steel base heater. This is what heats the pellet. You have this unit here on the right that actually heats the dishes. So this helps the entire process, all of the items to be warm. So you're not putting warm food on a cold plate, which is going to cool that down considerably. So warm food is going on a warm plate, then it's going on the pellet. Underneath the pellet is generally this um, underliner so that no one touches that metal base and burns themselves. Then on top of this would be a cover. So there's a lot of equipment that goes into using this food delivery system. There are newer methods to the pellet system. So instead of using that large metal container or compartment to heat the bases, it could be done on an on-demand process, so much like an induction burner. There are a lot of benefits in this method. The heating process of the pellet is much quicker. It uses energy more efficiently. Um, there are burn reductions. The piece that goes on here, the pellet that goes on here, generally has a liner that's built into it, so people aren't touching it and getting burned. And this system holds heat for about an hour. So it actually holds heat a little bit longer than a traditional pellet process. So just to review the pellet system, the basic components are the base, the pellet, that metal piece that retains the warmth, a lid, a plate, and you might also have an underliner, so a piece that would protect the patient and the staff from touching that metal base. The base and plates are heated by devices that are called lowerators. Those are those big metal compartments that you saw in one of the first photos in this set. The bases are heated to about 200 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. In the standard process where we use those lowerators, the heating retention is up to about 45 minutes. The newer process, that on-demand, that induction burner like model, can increase the heat retention to up to about an hour. These trays are fairly heavy though, right? When you have the underliner, the base, the lid, the plate, all of these things, and it can be about 10 pounds. So it's still, some hefty weight there. When you're delivering, 50 trays, that can be something to think about. So the next food delivery system we'll talk about are insulated trays. So this picture shows an insulated tray. There are compartments in here that are designed to keep hot food hot and cold food cold. The food is put on the tray, the top goes over it, it's sealed, and then that tray is brought up to the floor. So the components here include the plastic or foam base tray with the recessed area for plates and food, etc., and then the plastic cover that goes over the top. Heat retention here can be up to about an hour. And these trays, one of the bonus on these is that these trays can be delivered on open carts. So you don't necessarily need a heated cart to deliver this type of tray. So the last food delivery type of system we're going to talk about are hot and cold carts. So a hot and cold cart is just that. It contains a section that keeps food hot and a section that keeps food cool or cold. So there are one or two trays. The trays may be what we would call a mix and match, hot trays, cold trays, and the trays then have to be matched when they're pulled out. Or they may be split trays so that the trays are somewhat connected between the two areas and you would just pull out both sections at the same time. These carts typically need to be plugged in about an hour before service, so they need to be able to get up to temperature before the food is put in there. So either get up to temperature to stay warm or get down to temperature to stay cold. These carts are incredibly heavy and bulky. Think about in a hospital setting, there are often lots of ramps. These carts may have to be pushed up ramps or pulled down ramps. Um, these are, hard to maneuver. They don't drive very easily. So, things to be thinking about as, you're thinking about their use in a hospital setting. And these can be incredibly labor intensive, particularly when it's a match a tray. So when the trays aren't matched and you have to know you're taking out, the third compartment and the second, row to go to this one room. You have to be very careful in that you're serving the correct food to the correct people. So this is information I just talked about in the previous slide, so I'm not going to go through this particular slide again. So let's just talk a little bit about types of food service. We can have a centralized food service, or we could have a decentralized food service. And when we're talking about food service here, we're talking in terms of meal assembly. So a centralized assembly or centralized meal service, the food is produced and assembled in one location and then transferred for service. In a decentralized meal assembly or food service, food is produced in one location, transported, and assembled in another location. So the trays are not necessarily put together in the kitchen. The food may be transferred in a bulk form and then put together at the meal assembly site. So we can see here for centralized meal assembly, it eliminates double handling of the food. The food is only put together and touched at one location, and then it's just, sent and served out. It may be easier to supervise meal assembly, in particular when we're talking about specialized meals, to, check and do the double checks here. More chance that you can standardize portions and presentation. And then you may actually need less staff time. You're producing and assembling it likely in the kitchen, and then the trays are put together, and all that has to happen up on the floor is the trays are served out. In a decentralized process, you need duplication of equipment. You need to keep it hot, produce it and keep it hot in the kitchen. Then you need a way to keep it hot and portion it out and serve it at the decentralized location, perhaps up on a floor or in a unit. It's a multiple process, so preparing one location, carting the food, then putting it all together in another location. Maybe more difficult to supervise meal assembly here. Um, may have less control over portion size. There's always the concern about uh, correct meals going to the correct person, and you may need more staff. So staff in the kitchen to prepare and put the food together there, and then a whole nother set of staff to portion out and serve out the meal on the floor in the unit. So up until this point, many of the methods we've been talking about in delivering foods, we've been talking about delivering foods hot. Now we're going to talk a little bit about this idea of rethermalization. And rethermalization really is reheating food at the point of service. So what this really means is that the food is delivered cold and then reheated at the point of service and then served out hot to the patient or the client. So rethermalization at the point of service, and we can rethermalize food in a number of different ways, including in a microwave or in various heating units. The thing about rethermalization is we're not just talking about reheating the food, we're talking about reheating and maintaining the temperature of the food. So rethermalization units combine reheating and temperature maintenance in one unit. There are lots of different varieties or examples of rethermalization units. These are some names that you might see out there: Aladdin or a la carte or Dynex. But these units all typically do the same thing. The rethermalization unit must be able to reheat to above 165. So if we think back to our good food safety practices, when we're reheating food, we need to reheat it to 165. Or the units might be able to hold the food below 41. So they could be able to keep the food cold as well before it's reheated. They need to be able to do that. So these units must maintain these temperatures, and they must be able to transport the food. So let's take a look at some examples of rethermalization units. So this is an example of a Dynex rethermalization unit, and you can see that there is a cold and hot side, and that in between it is an air dam. So this photo on the bottom right-hand side shows on the left the hot food, on the right the cold food, and then an air dam in between it. So the air circulates hot on the hot side and cold on the cold side. And the cart would be wheeled up onto the floor. It would be placed in the heating chilling unit. So so you can see the cart with the wheels. That's the part that would be wheeled up onto the floor. It would go into this unit that sits behind it in the picture. And then that unit behind it would rethermalize the food. It would reheat the food on the right-hand side, get that food hot while still keeping the cold food cold on the left-hand side. Bulk rethermalization is another way to go. Here, instead of heating each individual tray, you would be rethermalizing and holding bulk food. So this could be a tray of lasagna or a casserole tray. After heating and before service, the food would need to be then plated before it's served out. In this method, you would need to rethermalize the food within 2 hours, right? So again, based on good food safety practices, you're getting it to temperature within 2 hours to that 165 to within to that temperature within 2 hours. And this oven has the ability to hold at refrigerator temperatures and then rethermalize it, or, heat it. This is 1 unit, so it does two of those things. So the food could be delivered cold, and then this 1 unit could keep it cold and then reheat it within 2 hours to that 165. All right, so this wraps up our presentation on hospital delivery systems. Be sure to take the quiz after this slide set, and if you want to participate in the hidden treasures, hidden Easter eggs, make sure you're providing your answers in discussion board for that. Thanks so much, guys. Stay safe and well.